Hey guys, how's everybody doing? It's Thursday. We're going to do Thursday's reading lesson. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Before we do Thursday's reading lesson, I'm just going to talk about yesterday's social studies assignment. So if you didn't get a chance to do it, go ahead and make sure you do it. The Kahoot was the assignment that needed to be completed. And down here is a slideshow for you about all the stuff that's going to be on your test, which is next Tuesday. So if you click on that, it'll go to slideshow. You can click on present mode. That'll bring it up bigger for you. And it says this slideshow will have information on your next test. Please take notes. If you've taken notes on previous slides, on the slideshow from Tuesday or last week Thursday, last week Tuesday, you may have already taken these notes. So maybe just go through and mark the ones that you've already taken notes on, and then you can just add ones that maybe you didn't take any notes on. So here's the vocabulary to know for the test. I took all the vocabulary and made the ones that were super important that I wanted you to know for the test. Different things to know that were important that are going to be on the test. Know that there's 3 branches of government on the U.S. Constitution, what they are and what they do. Know that there's 27 amendments, and then the most important of the 27 amendments. These are 2 videos that you can go watch that will just give you some more information that will help you with the test. Okay, so today we're going to be on page 302, and it's going to look like this in your iReady workbook. So today we're going to be reading a poem, and it's a narrative poem, and it's a story about a sage. So a sage is a wise person, and in the story they're going to be talking about how they have a pigtail and they're trying to bring the pigtail from the back to the front. Almost like if you've ever seen a dog who maybe they have a where they like to chase their tail, so they're trying to get to the tail. So the same thing with the sage, trying to get to the pigtail to bring it from back to front. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read this poem to you. And while I'm reading the poem, I want you to kind of pay attention to the rhythm of the poem. And if you hear in the poem a verse that doesn't sound like the other verses, I want you to go ahead and underline it. So there's going to be a rhythm to the poem, and then there's some verses in there that kind of break that rhythm or break the beat of the poem. So I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. So it says, and the poem is called A Tragic Story. And like I said, it's a narrative poem. So it has a character, it has rhythm, it has rhyme. So the poem, A Tragic Story. There lived a sage in days of yore, and he a handsome pigtail wore, but wondered much and sorrowed more, because it hung behind him. He mused upon this curious case, and swore he'd change the pigtail's place, and have it hanging at his face, not dangling there behind him. Says he, the mystery I've found. I'll turn me around. He turned him around, but still it hung behind him. Then round and out and in, all day the puzzled sage did spin. In vain it mattered not a pin, the pigtail hung behind him. And right and left and round about, and up and down and in and out, he turned, but still the pigtail stout hung steadily behind him. And though his efforts never slack, and though he twist and twirl and tack, alas, still faithful to his back, the pigtail hangs behind him. So we know from talking about poems and working with poems in the classroom throughout the year that each poem usually has a certain number of stanzas and a certain number of lines. So in this poem, each stanza has 4 lines, and if you count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we know that the poem has 6 stanzas and 24 lines. So which lines in the poem were different or had a different rhythm or beat to them than the other lines? So we're going to underline those lines. So in stanza 1, we have because it hung behind him. You see that it doesn't rhyme with your, war, or more, so it sounds differently. So if we reread the first stanza, there lived a sage in days of yore, and he a handsome pigtail wore, but wondered much and sorrowed more, because it hung behind him. So you can hear the difference between that last one and the 3 before it, because they all rhyme. So we underline all the last lines in each stanza because it has a different beat or rhythm to it. On the next page, we're going to answer questions 1 and 2. So it says, which statement best describes the last verse in each stanza? And those are the verses we just underlined. So is it A, it uses a different meter and does not rhyme with the last words in the other verses? B, it uses the same meter and rhymes with words in the first verse of every stanza? C, it uses the same meter, but only the last 2 verses in the stanza rhyme? D, it uses a different meter, but the last verse rhymes with the other verses in the stanza? So we know the answer would have to be A. It uses a different meter. Remember, meter we talked about is like the beat, and does not rhyme with the last words in the other verses. So if we look over here, we have your, war, and more, and then him. So that's totally a different sound, and it doesn't rhyme. In Numbers 2, it says, what effect does the rhythm of each stanza have on the reader's understanding of how the sage feels? Is it A, the change in the last line creates a feeling of excitement? B, the change in the last line creates a feeling of disappointment? C, the change in the last line creates a feeling of boredom and restlessness? Or D, the change in the last line creates a feeling of nervousness and concern? So we know by looking at the last stanza that it still hangs behind him. So it's more of a disappointment, B. He never did get that pigtail that he was trying to bring from the back to the front. Okay, so that would be our answer. So if you look at page 305, we're going to do the short response on that one. And we talked about how the structural elements in the story go along with the rhythm or the flow of the poem. So in this story, the poem the poet uses stanzas to kind of shape the poem. And then he uses rhythm to kind of tell us the story. And with the rhythm and the beat of the story, it kind of gives us that feeling of that he was disappointed at the end. So we're going to put on ours, in the poem, the poet uses stanzas to give his poem shape and to explain how the sage goes about trying to solve the problem. So it tells us what problem he's trying to solve, and we know at the end that he actually didn't get to solve that problem, which created that disappointment that the poem expresses. So if you need to pause this, go ahead and pause it so you can finish writing. If not, don't forget, catch up on all your works. Today's Friday, so you want to make sure you get everything done. And hopefully you guys have a great weekend, okay? And I will see you guys. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know what's happening. And I will see you guys Monday. Bye. Have a great one.